Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Boot. Joining me, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. How are you, Mr. Cunningham?
I'm great. We've had two really entertaining home games. What are we doing with your eyes over there, James?
I'm watching. You're great. You're like oh.
I have expression, lots of animated
Sunny
expressions.
outside, animated expressions.
It's getting a little cold, which I'm not a fan of, but yeah, great games at the G1C. The crowd has been phenomenal. Ready to talk some Kings basketball with you fine fellas.
All right. We are also joined by Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just fully realizing that we're at or past a year of the pod because we fully circled back around to Sean complaining about the cold.
No, this is with the three of us.
Yeah.
With the three of us, yes. Actually, no, you were here a lot. Like there was a time where Sean wasn't here. Sean was put on restriction.
Right.
Hiatus.
He was on a hiatus. Yeah, he was taking what did Paul Westphal call it? Oh no, it wasn't Paul Westphal. It was Jeff Petrie said that Paul Westphal had taken a philosophical vacation.
Huh.
If I remember correctly.
I've never been accused of doing anything philosophical, so I'm going to say that shit didn't happen.
That's amazing. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us here. If you are watching on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. That helps us. Also, subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. We're going back to 2 shows this week. We'll figure it out. We actually have kind of a weird week where no games Monday, Tuesday, a game on Wednesday, not a game until Saturday. So we should be able to fit in another pod sometime during this week. So we will see you again. We also, in the next pod, we will start our new sponsorship with Prize Picks.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So the next pod, we will have Prize Picks as part of our sponsorship package here at the Kings Beat. So we're going to have to integrate something. So maybe Sean and Brenden help James make his bad picks for Saturday, which is always comedic because I'm really bad at this.
Yeah, you're doomed. You're going to rely on us.
I'm doomed.
Yeah. We got this.
We got this.
I mean, we couldn't hurt things, right? Because it was pretty bad last year, if I remember right.
Every once in a while, Sean, I hit one. And the thing is that James does is ridiculously large, like parlays. Like, well, they're not parlay. I can't say parlay. Like I will do 6 selections for my online gaming, and so those are usually very difficult to hit.
And you always bet the over. I don't think I've seen you bet the under more than 5 times. It's over everything.
You're probably right. I almost always bet the over. I think it's because I think of the world like as half empty.
Well, then you're never out of it. You're never out of it. You know.
Yeah.
You can always talk yourself into we might get 2 overtimes.
I was very, very frustrated when Davion Mitchell had 0.5 of a 3-point make in game 1 and didn't make the 0.5. That was like, come on.
I don't think you should be allowed to do it on the Kings games because you know we sit next to each other, and I might be letting too much out of the bag here, but there's moments where I'll hear off to the corner of my ear, might be just off to the shoulder here, and he'll just be like, they'll be like, you know, let's just put it as Malik Monk hoisting a 3 early 3rd quarter, and you just hear James go, "Gotta have this." No, you don't, James.
I don't have to have. No, I'm saying the Kings at that moment have to have that if they're going to win a game.
Not in game 2 of the 3 of the regular season.
No.
In the 3rd quarter of a game. I mean, it happens so frequently. Like it should be a drinking game where you'll always see, I just kind of snicker to myself, and I don't think anyone's any of the wiser, but just James gotta have that. I'm like, okay.
I have a good time with it. I'm absolutely horrible. And I just think it's fun. I like the football ones. I'm better at football. Although it's just so random. I mean, yeah, I don't know. We'll get into
it's
it as
almost
the
a
season
Patrick
goes on.
Mahomes rant for sure.
Don't get me started on my
That'll be
Patrick
extra.
Mahomes.
That's going to be the extra thought at the final thoughts at the end of the night, end of this show, I'm sure.
That guy killed me. Killed me. He killed a lot of people. And he has all season long. Here we go. Thanks, Brenden.
No problem.
I'm no longer rolling with my homies. That's what I'm saying. No, I
Change your
am.
team name?
Still. No, I haven't changed my team name. That usually requires like even a worse season than I'm having. All right, what's going on, everybody? We've got plenty of stuff to talk about. Sacramento Kings are 2-1 on the season. They had when was the last time we did a pod? Was it Tuesday? Was it Thursday?
These days blend together,
It was
James.
a day.
We're day to day.
We're all day to day. It was what day, Brendan?
It was a day. Is all I got for you.
A day. I think
day
it was
that ends in
before
Y.
the first game. Yeah. I think it was before the first game of the season. Let's start with the fact that the Kings beat the Los Angeles Lakers on Sunday night because it's the most recent thing that we have to talk about. Of course, in that game, we had De'Aaron Fox go down with an ankle injury. Kind of a weird play. I don't even really know how it was Gabe Vincent's foot, I believe, how his foot even got in the way. But Fox stepped on it with his right foot, rolled it all the way over, fell into the stands. Kind of an ugly scene. Had to be helped off the court. Then, of course, does his best Willis Reed impersonation, comes back out, hits a three, scores a bucket, and plays in the overtime, only to get yanked halfway through overtime and sit out, and then basically have to get helped carried to the locker room after the game. Just we've all kind of got the same information, but I'll pass it to you, Sean. What are you hearing, and like how long do you think this thing's going to drag out?
I mean, based on people I've talked to, there's a kind of a collective sigh of relief from some. There's others who think that even if it's a week, it's really trying to keep De'Aaron from coming back too soon and maybe doing further damage. I think collectively everyone's happy that this isn't more significant than it could have been, especially this guy. We talk about him and his new partnership with Steph Curry. Again, he wore Curry's all pretty much last year. But like Steph Curry, he does wear those ankle braces, and he has for a few years now. And for that ankle to go all the way to the floor like that is a troubling sight to see. That means there must have been a lot of pressure on that ankle, and for him to continue to play, which was really gritty. He came back. I mean, you saw it. And he's telling everyone, "I'm fine. I can play." Him going out there doing what he did, you can tell he was very much bothered by his ankle. I think the coaching staff did the right move to bring him off the floor, and even to see him go out and to be on the court. I even had it on video from my vantage point. I thought it was odd because you could see Mike Brown kind of calling his name out to him, and Fox wasn't looking at it. He kind of glanced at him, and he's just like, "No, I'm playing." And then finally to get him to come out of the game in the overtime session was the right move. But there's a collective sigh of relief. There's also optimism, but there's also just trying to save him from himself. And I think he's shown the knack to play through it. I think it's a positive that it's not that left ankle, which had that grade 3 sprain back in 2019, and he's had some little nagging things along the way. So the fact that it's right ankle to me is a little bit better. Not that it makes it any easier, but certainly it's all going to be pain tolerant. So yeah, give him a week, maybe a little bit more. I think it might go a little bit more just to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's probably going to be a little bit more than that. I mean, of course, the Kings play Wednesday against Golden State Warriors and Saturday against the Houston Rockets. I think Monday against the Rockets. I'm not sure that I put that guy on a plane and worry about that thing swelling up. Maybe it won't. But that's going to be really difficult to keep him from going to Houston, which is his hometown. This is the only time this year where the Kings play in Houston, and they have like 2 games in a row. I think it's Saturday and Monday, right? Then they come,
Monday.
yeah. Then they come back to play Portland, right?
On Wednesday.
Yeah, so you could see a world in which he doesn't play 4 straight. What's after the Portland game?
The first in-season tournament game, the November 10th game against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Is that on the Friday?
That is on a Friday, yes.
Yeah. So all the in-season tournament games are Tuesday and Friday, I believe. So yes. Anyway, I would assume that there's a good chance that we might see him start practicing later next week. And then, as we get closer to that Friday game, that would probably be the one I would circle. But maybe I'm wrong. Brenden, guy's averaging 31.3 points per game. He's shooting 37.5% from 3. He's averaging, 6 assists, 4.3 rebounds. Like, he's just killing it. What do the Kings do without De'Aaron Fox?
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing everything. I think defensively also, like you mentioned all those numbers, but defensively, they've been preaching the physicality. They always talk about him as the head of the snake. I think he's done a great job setting the example there and really setting the tone as the point of attack defender. So, we saw last night, De'Aaron goes out after a minute and a half of overtime, and Malik Monk has 11 points in that overtime and one huge assist to that Kevin Huerter 3 that ended up pretty much icing the game. Like, you have other guys that can step up. I think Malik Monk is a very capable playmaker. I think it could mean, I mean, I obviously think Davion Mitchell would get inserted in that starting lineup. I don't know if you guys think differently. And I think that you could ask for more from Davion. We saw him do pretty well last year in sporadic starts, but it could mean some opportunity for guys a little bit further when it comes to some rotational pieces. Like, maybe this means you see a little bit of Colby Jones for 10 to 15 minutes a night. Like, one of the lone positives with injuries is it creates opportunities for other guys on the roster, like you're seeing with Sasha Vezenkov, I'd imagine, and Trey Lyles being unavailable. And maybe that could give an opportunity for somebody like Colby to get his feet wet a little bit earlier than some people would expect. And that could pay off long term. So I think they have guys that can play more minutes. You can play Chris Duarte more than the 15 to 20 that he's been getting, in my mind, and really spread it out. But when it comes to starting lineups, I think you can roll with Davion. Maybe you play with a little bit of Colby in Davion's typical role as that backup one, and you can close games with Malik Monk, as we saw last night.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Mike Brown was pretty clear last year. Anytime that De'Aaron Fox was out of action, which he missed 9 games on the season, I think 72 play. He played in 73, right? Anytime that he stepped away, Davion started. Except for I think one game Davion wasn't okay. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think late in the season Davion wasn't healthy. And then, like, much to the surprise of everybody in the building, every single time Matthew Dellavedova played. And I think that was a big surprise last year. He played 13, 14 minutes almost every single time De'Aaron Fox missed a game. So, yeah, I'm kind of on board with whatever Mike does here, whether it's, Jordan Ford or it's Colby Jones. I think both of them have shown that they're worth at least giving an opportunity, as long as it's just not, barbecue chicken on the defensive end every single possession, which, I think both of them will at least try hard. I don't think it helps.
Maybe Keon Ellis.
I was just going to say that. I think, look, you nailed it with Davion. I think you nailed it with Colby Jones' possibility of, especially the trust that Mike Brown has been able to have in a very small sample size of the preseason, and Colby being able to rise to that occasion. He wouldn't be the point guard necessarily, but when you have to rely on the likes of Malik Monk to be that point guard with that second unit, I think it will create a hole for Colby to play. But the one where I think you can kind of get away with going a little deeper into the rotation and kind of see what you have, especially before, the Stockton Kings season begins, which is on the 10th, I believe. Brendan, check me on that if that's right. But I think you can see Keon. I don't think it's necessarily, let's say Fox misses 4 or 5 games, I don't think you're seeing him every single night, but I think that there's real estate for him to make an appearance in a couple of these games and see how he's been able to fit in with this unit and maybe make a little bit of inroad here and, kind of get some time under his belt with some meaningful games. So I think that's why you have some of these guys there. And I think, but I don't think he's going to go terribly, Mike Brown, that is, I don't think he's going to go that terribly far into the rotation.
Yeah, and I'd also point out the Sacramento Kings walked into the season with only 14 rostered players. And that means that every night, one of the two-way players is active. With Trey Lyles out of action the first 3 games, that means that 2 of them are active, and then there's only 1 inactive. I haven't been tracking who's active and who's active and who's inactive every night. But Colby Jones is on the main roster as well. So you've got Jalen Slauson, you've got Keon Ellis, you've got Colby Jones, and you've got Jordan Ford, that are all kind of like grouped up into this little package of young guys who are going to play most of the season or a good portion of the season at Stockton, with Colby Jones being the one guy that might actually play more with the parent club, depending on how things go. I'm going to guess.
I actually have a feeling that you're not going to see Colby in Stockton. I mean, barring something unforeseen, I don't think that they're going to do that. But
really?
that's more speculation on my part. I don't. Yeah, I kind of think it is so far so good. They like to keep him around this club. I don't think you're going to see moments with him with Stockton. But
what about like 2 days off in between home games? Stockton has a home game one of those days. He hasn't been playing.
Possibly, sort of, but I think him being on the main roster and some of the stuff, again, some of the trust he has built around him. I honestly feel it's different, but it's a similar approach to maybe what they did with Keita the year he was here, that first rookie season where he didn't really go to Stockton at all, and he didn't really benefit much from it. I think conversely, it's a little different because I think Colby Jones factors into the equation a little bit. Especially now, who knows, a month from now, it could look completely different. But if I was kind of rolling the dice here and just kind of, leaning one way or the other, I don't think it'll happen that much, if at all.
I'm going to disagree with you. And the reason why I'm going to disagree with you is there seems to be a lot of assets being placed in the Stockton Kings this season. And I believe that's because Angeli Ronadive is the general manager. And I think there's an emphasis on that team winning games. And after last season, they did well, but then lost in the first round of the playoffs. I think that they believe that they want to push for something bigger this year. And so they're going to try to put a team together, put a squad together. I think that's why they've been so active, like doing Exhibit 10 contracts and paying for maybe a few extra guys that you wouldn't normally pay for. So maybe I'm wrong. And I do think Colby Jones will find his way in the rotation at one point in the season, whether that's for a long-term thing or a short-term thing. I think that that's up for debate, and we'll see how he does. But I also think how well he played in preseason would make you think that he's probably closer to ready to, at least getting some minutes here and there than the other guys, at least, like the Slausons or Keon Ellis or Jordan Ford might be.
And that's what it is. His development is quite further along than some of the other two-way players.
Yeah, I just think that when it comes to winning, Colby Jones helps you win at the G League level.
Sure.
And I think that they're going to try to win, which is, again, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. We'll see. But that's kind of what I think the focus might be. Like Brenden, is there something that you've seen from Colby that you think would work in this last with this group here, if Fox is going to be out for, say, 4 or 5 games like we're speculating, or are you more like, okay, this is just a young group of players, like all of them are kind of like they are who they are in different ways, but they haven't distinguished themselves from each other?
Yeah, I think Colby is really good next to these established guys just as a connector. So I think, he benefits from playing next to De'Aaron Fox as much as anybody else, but I think he's pretty ready. I think that he's just done a little bit of everything, right? That 3-point shot was going down in preseason, knocked it down at Xavier. We saw the playmaking. His touch around the rim has always blown me away throughout college and now into, the infancy of his NBA career. So I think there's a lot of things. Defensively, he provides some positional versatility. You can put him on a 1, you can put him on a 2, you can maybe sneak him on a 3 sometimes in some switches. So I think that he just has looked so poised. Mike Brown described him as quick but not hurried. And I think that's a great way to put his game, and that's so valuable in the NBA. So I think he actually would benefit more from playing alongside Fox. But if you have to look in his direction because you need to figure out where you're going to fill these minutes in, I think he's, from what we saw in preseason, I'd be optimistic about him, embracing and taking advantage of the opportunity.
I totally agree. I think he's a guy that can step in and actually make an impact. I don't know if it'll be like, oh my gosh, look what Colby Jones is doing. But I also don't think it'll be like, oh my gosh, look what Colby Jones is doing. Like, I think it'll be a good thing. I'm also, just a shout out to those guys. We saw it. Jalen Lawson was sick the first 2 games, I believe. So he was not part of the fun. But opening night, Colby Jones made his NBA debut, and so did Jordan Ford. So shout out Folsom High. That's pretty amazing for a local kid to actually not only make it to a 2-way contract, but 2-way doesn't guarantee you'll ever play with an NBA team. To actually step on the court and actually get minutes and actually shoot a shot. That was pretty cool to see on opening night in Utah. We've got a lot of things to chatter about here tonight. The Kevin Huerter situation has been like all over the board for the last, I'd say, 2 weeks. We saw sort of the highs and lows, and I think we may have seen like the beginning of Kevin Huerter pulling out of his slump during the win over the Lakers. Just where do you get like? We were all in the post game watching Kevin Huerter kind of like the weight was lifted off his shoulders, right?
He bared his soul.
He did a little
Therapy
bit,
session.
right?
Yeah.
It was pretty intense. Like, and I think the last couple of weeks for him have been pretty intense. Just I don't know, what do you guys think about him coming out the other side? He somehow survived, and it looks like Kevin Huerter might look more like Kevin Huerter, at least in the win over the Lakers.
You could see it. Yeah, you could see the way he threw his arms up in the air, enjoyed the moment. His teammates, Trey Lyles' first one out there, almost bowled him over, even with his bad calf, which hopefully won't keep him out too much longer. But yeah, I mean, and I thought he was very honest, as he has been over the past several weeks, about his struggles. I think him talking about the support, I thought there was a real kind of cool real world moment there that I think a lot of people could relate to, where he's talking about his happiness being dictated upon how he shoots the ball or how he performs on the court. Is something that he still has to get used to in this life. And I think a lot of it, let's face it, can be a social media toxicity that's around there through all the highs and lows. I mean, fans have been pretty brutal on him in a social media place. It's good that you don't see that trickle over to support that you hear throughout that arena, because those fans have, you don't hear any boos. You hear people cheering him every second that they get. You see still people who are, you're seeing more and more people dress up like him. Maybe it's because we're around Halloween right now, but it's fun. And to see him have that moment where he can call it a small victory in a very long season really kind of puts it in perspective. And, he's experienced a lot of ups and downs. And the one thing that's really kind of kept him sane, if you will, is, the just outpour of support, mainly from his, close circle, but the teammates have been fantastic for him.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was tired of the Kevin Huerter conversation. Like, his shot was going to fall eventually, right? And it was about more than that, but obviously his defensive shortcomings are more magnified when he's not making an offensive impact. And the shots were going to fall eventually, but I do think that the messaging behind Mike Brown's, call for physicality and looking in other directions, and Huerter getting limited minutes in those first 2 games might have paid off in that game against the Lakers. He did a great job on the glass. He won the defensive player of the game chain and joked after the game that it only took him 3 games this year instead of 30, which I thought was kind of funny. But he embraced it. He had the physicality that they were looking for on the defensive end. He was a connector on offense, not just a shooter. He had a decent amount of assists in there as well. So I thought he did a little bit of everything. Like, I knew the shot was going to go down eventually. I think what Sean highlighted of him talking about how emotionally up and down he or it can be, just based on what happens between those lines, was great perspective from him. And I'm sure it feels good to be out of a quote unquote slump. But yeah, I mean, we know what Huerter is capable of, right? Like I thought that De'Aaron Fox after the second game put it really well, just saying like, he didn't get here by accident. He didn't get an extension by accident. He didn't stay here by accident. Like, he's going to figure it out. And he had a solid game against the Lakers. This is only the third game. It didn't take long. And I'm glad he's back in a little bit of a rhythm. And hopefully it was checked him a little bit when it came to some of the defensive physicality that not just him, but the entire team.
And Brenden, it was doing it more than just shooting the ball. I mean, really timely rebounding. How about the block shot on Anthony Davis? That was wild. I mean,
blocks.
he got the defensive player of the game chain for a reason. I think that's in one sense to obviously help uplift his spirits, but he was super impactful in that Laker win.
Yeah, the 3 rebounds in overtime, I believe, are what were the deciding factor in that game. Like, go back and watch him. They were some of the biggest rebounds, certainly in his career, but like just team wise, they were huge. Every single one of them. The one he goes up and snatches one hand out of the air, like, who the hell is that? Some redhead just ran out there and jumped over everybody and grabbed a rebound. Like, what just happened? Wait, that's Kevin? Yeah, I'm going to say, like, I'm going to get a little bit weird off script here. I think that no, we never script anything. Of course not. No, but I think that there's this funny thing where for the first like 5 years of his career, Kevin Huerter's like this he's a fun guy. You know, he's different because he's redhead. He's, you know, pasty white. He has these cool nicknames. Everyone, you know, does a little Rick roll or whatever. Anytime he does something amazing, he's headband Huerter. He's Cave On. He's you know, Red Velvet. Like, everything has been like, oh, he's cool. He's cool. And then when all of a sudden he gets called out by his coach, and it was almost like a really weird, like, experiment to watch playing out because it knocked him down like really far. And like we saw, like Brenden and I had the first interview with him that one night. Sean wasn't in there the one night, but it was like super defensive and like very different than any Kevin Huerter that we've seen before. Then we get the second interview with him, and it's different, but you know, he's starting to understand that he's fighting through it. It's almost like Kevin Huerter was in a little bit of a bubble, and then all of a sudden the bubble got popped, and then he actually saw all the negative on social media. And the reason I bring all this up is because I think the three of us have like very different feelings on social media. So, like, Sean thinks that social media is the biggest waste of it's BS and it doesn't matter at all. Right?
Well,
that's Sean. And you hate social media.
No,
you think it's all BS.
It's not a real place. There's a lot of toxicity, but I will say it's a useful tool, and there's a lot of stuff that you can glean from it, but it's not, it shouldn't be treated as this real place that like exists. Like, it's not real, and half of your following is fake. Followings don't matter. Like, your following is the people you keep around you in real life. Like, with respect to those who do follow, even people, idiots like us, like, you're following for information. You might like something about certain people, but again, that's not a true tangible thing, right? So what do you see in social media predominantly? Phony, fake, and toxic environments.
The noisy minority is what you hear.
Right.
You hear the noisy minority, but the noisy minority, like, I had someone
is impactful to a lot of people.
Tag him.
Oh yeah.
In a response tweet, I wish that Kevin Huerter would blow out his knee. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? But I think that Huerter has, like, so for me, I use it as a way to engage fans and to promote content, and, you know, and it's part of the content package that I bring to everybody. It's just what I do. But the reason why I wanted to have this discussion is because, Brenden, you grew up with social media in a different way than Sean and I did. Well, when Sean and I were kids, there was not social media. Like, to be honest, and when I was in high school, there wasn't cell phones. There wasn't internet. There was, but it was like reserved for like super rich people who like used it for business purposes. Like, you've
The
lived
dark
in a
ages.
different world. Well, it's not that long ago, but
the black and white days.
You've lived in an entire world. Well, there's certainly tube TV days, but where this is like the normal and it's a part of your life, and it's a much larger part of your life than it is of me and Sean when we aren't here, when we're not doing King stuff. It's not part of our lives, but you've been raised in it in a different way than we have. And that's where, again, Kevin's 25 years old. He's not that far off from Brendan's age. And that's why I wanted to have this discussion, because you've seen a different side of it, the sort of darker side that isn't all that pleasant quite often.
Yeah, I think people take to it differently in general, right? And obviously it's very different for me and my friends compared to professional athletes that are very much in the spotlight, but like it's so much easier to focus on that vocal minority that you're talking about, right? Like he could have 10 people saying great things, and then you see one person that's just totally off their rocker, and that's the one that sticks with you. And I don't know what Kevin's activity is like on social, but like the fan base definitely was on his ass and not exactly being, very forgiving.
The social media fan base.
Yes, you're right.
You're right, because
when
he missed shots, it wasn't like a collective groan. It was like oh man, come on, guy, you got this. That's what you could hear from the fans. It wasn't like this cantankerous, like some a-hole standing up and yelling, "Huerter sucks!" It wasn't something like that, but we were kind of getting towards that. And the social media is like an early barometer for what could start to play out in different aspects, where you kind of have the groupthink thing happen. But I still felt like you're right. It was all, the social media world was ugly. Inside the arena, I still thought it was pretty pleasant.
Yeah.
The person that wants to see his knee blow out would never walk up to him in a bar and tell him that.
No, they'd walk up and ask for his autograph.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Or shameful.
And then I looked at like the post-game YouTube yesterday, and everybody loves him.
Right.
Everybody loves him.
Because, and that's the thing, like there are people out there who genuinely will, like I say this all the time, like for as vile of a place as social media can be, I'm actually surprised how supportive, even for my own work and stuff that I do, people are. Like no one's ever really terrible to me, you know what I mean? And I don't really block people either. Like I know a lot of people, Tim Kawakami in the Bay Area comes to mind. He'll block people just for saying hello to him. like I don't. And I've always had that's the thing that I've always found that's interesting, because, I talk a lot of trash. I like to be, sarcastic and dry and have a sense of humor. And there are people who certainly don't like me, but they don't come out and I don't feel those attacks like a lot of professional athletes and, real celebrities do. And I like how some people, because there is this like societal kind of interesting thing, and just to see how people react to social media, something like that, like the noisy minority. Some people use it as fuel to the fire, motivation. Other people have a good way of blocking out, and some absolutely just detach. And I'm always jealous of those who do, because I work in an industry where you're not really allowed to detach, right? So like in an era now where mental health is at the forefront of everything we do, and trying to provide healthy mental status and space for people, it's a wonder that some people just don't completely detach, and I'm jealous of those that do. But at the same time, like it's a useful tool if used the right way.
I find it often people get bothered by the negative comments only if it's sort of piling on to something that they already are slightly insecure or like worried about themselves, right? Like if you see something that you just know is so far from the truth, then you think opposite, like you blow it off, right? But if you know you're struggling and then you see all of it, then it's just piling on, right? And I think that those can maybe get to people a little bit more. Not to speak for Kevin, I don't know how Kevin deals with this stuff, or again his activity on socials at all, but I think typically it's more so when it's something that you already have been thinking about yourself.
Yeah. And James, I think I showed you, I don't go through all of my mentions, it probably as much as maybe I should at times, but I saw one just to illustrate, like I never thought I would see, based on up to this point, like a fire Mike Brown tweet.
Oh,
and based off the Warrior loss and maybe the Warriors having a little bit of ownage on the Kings right now. Yeah, I was shocked to see a fire Mike Brown tweet sent my way. Just bizarre.
Absolutely bizarre. Yeah, I do block a lot of people, but I don't like when people use inappropriate, like, don't come into my timeline with racial stuff. I don't like that at all.
Right.
And I'll just block you. And I know some people are like, well, I just meant like, you don't need to explain it to me. I don't want to see it in my timeline. So I'll block people that way. I don't have a lot of people like attack me, but when they're like, people have lost their mind and just going crazy on a player or on a coach or whatever, there are times where I'm like, okay, look, you need to be on a timeout and not have that vileness in my timeline. I don't want to see it. So there are times where I do block people. And then I like on occasion I'll run into like a pack of Kings fans outside the arena and like two of them are like, "Man, you blocked me." I'm like, "Okay, what'd you say?" And we'll go through it and I'll go through and I'll unblock them. And be like, "Okay, are you sure you haven't said any other things?" "No, I haven't said it. I promise." And like, "Okay." Like typically I'm fine with Kings fans. Like I was with Chris Watkins in the garage the other night and a Kings fan came up to us and said hello. Like I'm totally fine, like saying hello and going out and being part of all the world stuff there. But on social media, like if you're going to be a complete jackass, then I don't need you to get my coverage. You can go find your coverage somewhere else.
I'll say this too. Like I'm not just trying to I want to draw a line here because I think, there are negative comments and, social media can be toxic. That can stand on its own, but you can also, just like the three of us morons, you can have an opinion. If your opinion is that the Kings are better off by trading, Kevin Huerter for something, that's fine. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
But
I just don't engage in that stuff. Yeah.
No, and that's fine. Like that's that everyone's entitled to an opinion and they root for their team and they're going to have the players they like and the players that they don't like. My whole thing is it's fascinating to see how quickly, I've been, sarcastically saying, "Oh, Kevin Huerter lost his shot in the 3-point shootout when he was in Utah." And you look at the numbers and you go, "Oh, there might be something to that." And I remember Nick Anderson, missing those free throws in Orlando, coming to the Kings, and he was a terrible free throw shooter from that moment forward. It ruined him. It's so much as a mental game, and there are real world scenarios. I don't think I'm ready to say that that's happened to Kevin Huerter, and certainly not for a guy who started off shooting like over 60% at one point last year to start the season, was from the perimeter, was incredible. But using that in mind, it's just how quickly people can hyper focus on one thing and realize that this is the same team that started 0-4 and finished third in the West. Like, don't you kind of have to give it some life and let it kind of evolve into something before having these like constant knee-jerk reactions, or you just have a hatred towards a player that you just can't stand seeing for one reason or another? And certainly that's going to happen with fans, and that's why they call them fans. There's fandom, there's fanatics, right? But it's just fascinating to see how quickly somebody can have their opinions and mold those opinions, and it's great, but at the same time not realize that, like, what if your ceiling, and again I think we all think that the Kings' success is there's room for improvement there and that they could potentially go to greater heights even this season or the season after, but Kevin Huerter is very much a part of that. And if you lose Kevin Huerter and whoever, I mean, that's the other thing, is you never really have somebody that you can plug in there. Most fans will say, "Got to trade him," and won't really have, okay, well, who are you getting? And even if you have a replacement for him, doesn't mean you finish better than where you were. It could have a detrimental effect on your team. So what if the ceiling was third in the West and you reached that? You know what I mean? And it's like, try to replicate that. There's no guarantee that moving somebody like Kevin Huerter equates to success for your team.
Well, that, and I think the person that everyone would love to see out on the court, if they are going to replace, the growing, again, the noisy minority, it's Chris Duarte. And I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but Chris Duarte is averaging 4 personal fouls per game, and he's averaging 18.3 minutes per game. Like, he's not a viable option today. He could be a viable option in a month. But for right now, we're talking about a player who sat for like 200 and something days and didn't play basketball because of injuries. And now he's getting back into it, and the flow and everything else. Like, I love the aggressiveness. I love what he's bringing to the table. But at the same time, like he's such an instigator. But does anyone else notice that the Kings are in the bonus? Like they're in the penalty every single freaking quarter, and it's a lot because you got guys like Chris Duarte are coming off the bench, and like it's like kung fu time.
Small sample size too, Brendan. I don't know if you agree with this, but you look around the roster, especially last night. I think it reached a crescendo. You've got Fox and Domas in foul trouble,
and Murray, all three of them.
Yeah, and there was a ton of fouls. I think but that's what I don't want to put the spotlight on Duarte too much, as a result of that. But like that's what comes with trying to improve defense and physicality and be physical without fouling. That's really difficult to do, especially for a team that sucks defensively and is trying to make improvements in that area. This is kind of what comes along with that. And I think Mike Brown he's talked about it in the preseason. He doesn't mind fouling. He doesn't mind it. It's showing that they're trying to defend. If anything, it puts the ball in his court onto how to divvy up minutes in the rotation because of foul trouble. And yeah, Duarte's right there. I mean, he's fouling a lot for sure.
Yeah, but I also go ahead.
Davion fouled a little bit in that one too. Like I think everybody was kind of guilty in that last game specifically. And Duarte's going out there and getting placed on LeBron when HB's not out there to have that responsibility. So like I get it a bit, but that was definitely one of my big takeaways in yesterday's game. It was 23 free throws in that first half for the Lakers and only 11 in the second half in overtime. Like it seemed like they made the adjustment. They were remaining physical and pulled their hands back a bit. Like Domas obviously still ended up fouling out, and I still think they need to get better, but they knew that this was going to be part of the process. This is how this was going to go. Minnesota did this when Chris Finch first went over. They just mucked up the game and tried to get a bunch of turnovers, and that leads to a bunch of fouls. And eventually you sort of realize your moments. It's really using your hands, right? Just keeping your hands back, not swiping at the end of plays. Because a lot of times they do good and then they swipe at the end. So I think it's just going to be an adjustment. I do think that they got better as the game went on, although it was definitely a point of concern. And it definitely helps that the Lakers missed, 8 free throws in that game? It would feel way worse if the Lakers did better from the free throw line and could have just easily won that game off that.
Yeah. I would say that what I've seen from Duarte so far is there's an intensity he brings to the court, and I relate it to the way that Davion Mitchell was super intense in his rookie season. As soon as he stepped on the court, you felt the level of intensity overall raise, and you felt specifically on the defensive end, other people were feeding off of what he's doing a little bit. And I think a little like some of it is that Duarte's coming in the game and he's kind of amping up everybody. You can kind of feel it when he's in, he is picking up guys at half court and like instigating. And you're like, holy cow, this guy's all over LeBron James. And that's a good thing. And the team needs to adjust to like the volume of what's happening and stay out of foul trouble. But, Mike Brown talked about it during like early in preseason. Like, we can't have guys come off the bench and pick up a whole bunch of fouls in like a 2-minute stretch, and all of a sudden we're on the penalty. And that's what's happened like every single night. It feels like the other team is just getting to the line. The Lakers, whether they flopped or not, I think it doesn't help that you're playing two teams early in the season, in the Lakers and the Warriors, that love to flop. Whether it's D'Angelo Russell or the Anthony Davis foul out play on Domas, where he just like flops to the floor and throws his leg out and hooks Sabonis. You're like, what in the world is happening here? But same thing we've seen from Chris Paul, same thing you've seen from Steph Curry, like this almost intentional trying to draw fouls all the time. Well, it is intentional. And so maybe it won't look as bad when they're playing the Houston Rockets and no one cares if the Houston Rockets flop on the floor. You're not getting the foul call either way. So I don't know.
Can I ask something?
Sean's on mute.
Oh,
my bad. You think I'd figure out this program by now. I like when Fox calls out the flopping with his
I love it.
Gyrations. So looks like he's being electrocuted. And
I do. Yeah.
It's great.
Matt George did put together like a compilation of all of them, and they're so funny back to back. They're so good.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. How has the JaVale McGee experience been so far for you guys?
You want me to go first?
Yeah,
I think James is
for it.
going to leave the mic to go find his blowtorch real quick.
Click.
I think the JaVale McGee experience has been a bit up and down, to put it mildly, but I don't think it totally kills them. What I think is JaVale McGee has been a nice addition for the most part. I think it's too small of a sample size for one, but I think you're seeing a guy struggling with what he used to be and what he is now, what they'd like him to be and what he is now. I think he has a nice chemistry with some of the second members, particularly with Malik Monk. And I think that's great, but I think the tough part is I view him, if I was to bet, I just don't think he's an everyday player. And I think when Trey Lyles gets back, some of that we'll see how Mike Brown tinkers with that. But I'm not one of the opinion, and it might differ from the coaching staff, that feels that you can rely on JaVale McGee night in, night out. I think he's a guy that you can go to. I think he is an upgrade over Alex Len for the most part, especially with the way he rebounds, blocks shots, lob threat, all of those things. But I don't think he's run the floor particularly great, and I don't think I think it's been a little clunky to begin. I think part of that is just not being able to rely on him every single night. I love him against guys like the Lakers, where you have these big teams, teams with length. This is exactly what they need. But true to form with a lot of things that come with JaVale McGee is oftentimes you're going to have that oh no moment. Malik Monk tends to have oh no moments. Sasha Vezenkov has had oh no moments, although they're a little bit few and far between. You're starting to see more consistency from him, but in my mind, the way I look at JaVale McGee he is a tool in the toolbox. I just don't know that you need to utilize him all the time.
Yeah, so I don't want to take a blowtorch to him because, like in all honesty, like there are moments where he's incredible. I mean, the play where he took somebody off the dribble and went in and for a gigantic hammer in the last game. I think it was around Anthony Davis.
He did a fake DHO on AD and then threw it down past LeBron.
Yes. And you know what? In fairness, I think the coaching staff knew that was coming because they were they were leaving him. Yeah. They just completely like throwing into JaVale, and then the defender just leaves to go take care of the shooting that's around the King, thinking they're going to go for a three, and they just left him.
So I like the bond he has with Monk. I think there are plenty of times where it's just like, holy cow, like that was incredible. I can't believe we just saw that. I mean, he's already had probably 4 or 5 dunks that are just like, probably top 50 all time in Sacramento Kings history, where I can't believe he just like his length and athleticism still at 35. I think the problem that I have with him is like we all have friends that like when you're in your early 20s, everyone's hanging out, everyone makes mistakes, everyone drinks too much sometimes. Everyone does something that's like crazy, jumps off something they shouldn't, like all that stuff, right? And then slowly but surely, everyone stops doing a lot of that stuff as they get older and older. They get married, they have kids, they can't afford to jump off of a roof and break their wrist or, hop on a skate. But you understand what I'm saying, right? And so, yes, you do. You do.
What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that JaVale is a guy that at 35 is still making the mistakes.
He's not jumping off roofs, my guy. What is he? Come on.
The equivalent of jumping off a roof is an NBA game where you swat a ball into the backcourt to breaking LeBron James for a dunk on the other end. Like there are moments where you're like,
that wasn't
bro, you've been in the league for 15 years. You can't do that. Please jump up with 2 hands and grab the rebound. Please don't swat the ball to the other team. Please, every time you block a shot, don't try to send it 14 rows deep. Like there's so many times where you're just like, he's not going to change. And and it's not that he's bad for the entire time he's out there. There are moments where he's incredible for like a 4-minute stretch, a 5-minute stretch. And then there's 35 seconds where he misses a wide open dunk and it flies off the rim. He gets the rebound and then throws it to the other team. Then you go back on the other end. You got someone who's sitting there defending Steph Curry. He runs from the backcourt and starts defending Steph while someone else is already defending him, and he's in the way. And you're like, oh no. And then boom, it's an easy bucket.
That was a bad one.
And that was all in like 35 seconds. You're like,
before Brenden, you're gonna be able to break this down, but this is maybe why it doesn't bother me as much as a lot of his, I think, dumbass moments come on the offensive end as opposed to the defensive end for the most part, and that's why it bothers me a little bit less, because this team is so potent offensively they can make up for it, and I think by and large what he provides defensively is decent for this team. Again, I don't know that you can count on it as regularly as they try to go to it. And I think that's, in my opinion, why it hasn't, quote unquote, worked through, again, 3 games in a preseason. Sorry, Brenden.
No, you're good. I mean, I think what James said makes sense. Like there's probably like 4 minutes. He plays 2 6-minute stretches, right? If he's playing the entire game, just the minutes the Domas are not out there. So 12, 13 minutes on the night. If you get 4 minutes of solid play, he's great in the pick and roll. He's 9 of 12 from the field so far. Him and Malik are a great pick and roll duo, right? And then you get the minute and a half of what was that? Like, that's still an okay ratio for a backup big is what it comes down to. I think he's just a very loud player. The great is loud and the bad is loud. And that can be a frustrating experience. I haven't loved him defensively. There was a play yesterday where I think it's AD's coming at him and his hands are down and you could tell he's waiting for the block. And then it was like, and it's after halfway, it's up. He looked like he was going to jump for it. I was like, please don't goaltend this. And he didn't, but I haven't loved what he's provided defensively. I know that he is a deterrent, which I think is hard to recognize sometimes in games because guys will drive into him and then just decide that's not going to work because of his size and athleticism. Right. Exactly. So I think there's positives. I think it's working through the kinks of the best ways to use him and just accepting that there's going to be 1 to 2 moments a game that you just have to forgive, and accept that there's a bunch of other good that comes with it. But like the playmaking, he has 3 turnovers and 1 assist. And it's like, I just don't think that this guy should be necessarily running DHOs, maybe a little bit here and there. But I don't know. There's little things to work through, but I, for the most part, am willing to forgive 1 or 2 moments a game. It's when it becomes too many, even if they are very frustrating. And I do agree with Sean that I'm curious to see what happens when Trey comes back. Does it eat into Sasha's minutes or JaVale's? And it's probably both, depending on the night.
Yeah, and Brenden, I totally agree with your statement. Everything he does is loud. It is like the dunks are loud, like the spectacular blocks, they're loud, but so is like goaltending on giving someone an and one on a goaltend. When Chris Duarte fouled somebody the other night and he goaltended a shot that had no chance of going in for no reason. Like after the whistle blows, the guy still throws up a layup and it's not going in, you can tell, and he just runs by and swats it. And it's like, okay, I don't know. Like some of the plays he does, and I get it. I just would like, again, at some point you would hope that you're not dealing with 1 or 2 mistakes every game. He's a backup center. He shouldn't make 1 or 2 egregious, loud, obvious mistakes every game. That's not something like.
And James, I mean, if you watch JaVale McGee, I mean, that's what he's known as. He's just not as good as he once was. And when you have some of those shortcomings, I mean, he's always good for moments like that. I mean,
always
taking off from the free throw line to try to dunk a ball in transition and airball your dunk might be the best JaVale McGee moment I've ever seen. Again, he's. I mean, the unfortunate part about it is he's been known as a punchline, but he has been a very integral part of a lot of, good and championship teams. And I still think
the Denver Nuggets 59 win team. Yeah.
Yeah. I still think there's a absolute purpose that he can serve on a good team. The problem is, and just going back to my original statement, because I don't want to be the cheerleader for JaVale McGee by any means, but I just don't think relying on him from a game in, game out standpoint, an everyday game type of scenario, even helps him at all. Not only the team, I just don't think it puts him in the best position to be successful. And I think it is going to come down to what games will we use him for. And again, let's see what it looks like with Trey Lyles out there. But again, if you're looking at, this is a long season, if you go 10 games where you're playing JaVale McGee, maybe it takes 10 games to see what that looks like. Maybe it takes 10 games for Trey Lyles to come back, although I don't think it will. I think he'll be back sooner than that. But this is positioning him in a way to be able to condition to run with this team, to be able to, again, he was 35-year-old dude who a year ago signed a 3-year deal with Dallas, and in a 3-year deal, you find yourself out after not even a full year. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, and I don't want to be like the JaVale hater, because I don't. I actually like some of the stuff he does is, like, to me, it's amazing. I would just say that, like, he makes Buddy Hield plays. And, like, I know fans, by the time Buddy Hield was no longer in Sacramento, they were so over the top done with Buddy Hield, and, like, the mental mistakes that Buddy made. And man, like, for all of Buddy's weaknesses, that dude played 30 plus minutes a night. In his worst season, he averaged 2.3 turnovers per game. So again, his turnovers were loud, his mistakes were loud, but, like, again, in Buddy's worst season, he averaged 2.7 turnovers per game, and that's as a guy who averaged 3.5 assists. And right now, JaVale McGee is averaging 2.6 turnovers per game. Like,
I will say the difference there, and not that we have to go down this road, but it just bears repeating. The team looked a lot different when Buddy Hield was here, and he played with a coach for 2 years that tried to turn him into a ball handler. It's like,
yeah,
you don't do that to Buddy Hield.
no.
And JaVale McGee knows the role he plays and gets to play the role he plays. Buddy Hield is being asked by his coach during those times to turn himself into something that he just frankly isn't.
Yeah. I went 2 hands on the rebound, stop tipping the ball out, and he's not the only one who does it. But it kind of leads to the other discussion. It's that, like, the tip out rebound is something that, like, it was so glaring because, again, LeBron James, like, I mean, he might as well have been Robert Horry. Like, it was a Vlade Divac-esque flip the ball right out to LeBron James for a wide open break on the other way. Like, what in the world? And I think it's
courtside.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's funny because we're watching, like, almost the polar opposite is Sasha Vezenkov. Like, he doesn't have JaVale's athleticism. He doesn't have the ability to go up and block a bunch of shots or do any of the things that JaVale can do. But every time he flies in and tries to tip a rebound out, it goes to his teammate. And, like, there's, like, a weird, like, again, like, Sasha's a guy you go play at 24-hour fitness, and you're like, who's the dude with knee pads and the big headband and the glasses? No. And they're like, oh, you want that guy on your team? You're like, what? And next thing you know,
come on.
No, but the next time you get done, you're like, the dude's got 45 points and 32 rebounds in a rec game, and you're like, how did that just happen? That dude just destroyed us. And that's what Sasha is. He goes out there, he does these crazy things where you're like, well, that doesn't look like it's going to work. And then you're like, huh, look at that.
He had a nice block that turned into a Davion 3 that I remember looking at.
He had a block.
Too. Yeah.
I mean, I am like, every time I'm watching him, I'm like, this dude is the sneakiest player I've ever seen. Like, all of a sudden he's standing in sneaky. No, he's John Turturro and Mr. Deeds. I'm very, very sneaky, sir.
These analogies, man.
And then you're like, you seem to have underestimated the sneakiness. There he is again. You're like, how does he magically show up under the basket? Someone bounces it to him. He's like, whoop, right up and through. Like, I don't know. Like, I have enjoyed watching the Sasha Vezenkov experiment, who is, like, he's averaging 9.7 points in, like, 15 minutes a game. I don't know if he can, if you gave him 30.
Yeah, he's a scorer.
Yeah, I don't know if you gave him 30, he'd be averaging 18.6, but I almost want to just, like try it one time just to, let's see what he does. Because I don't know. He is such a smart player, and he's doing all of these crazy things that somehow work, and it's just craftiness all over the court. Am I crazy?
Yes, you're absolutely crazy. I mean, look, the guy has stumbled on his face quite a few times. Again, the moments are coming fewer and farther between. He's getting a better feel for the NBA game, and you've been able to see it happen in real time. But Sasha's in the prime of his career, played a lot of basketball, is in the prime of his career and learning the NBA game. JaVale McGee's 35 years old trying to hold on to, you know what I mean? Like, just the comparison
No. I mean, like one of them is like a super athlete that does crazy super athletic things. The other one is not a super athlete at all and does all of these crafty things. That's what I mean. That like as polar opposites. Like
Gotcha.
I'm not saying one guy is short and one guy is tall. I mean,
Right.
like just the way that they think about the game, they're instinctual versus thinking through the game. Like it's just they're very different, opposite, like polar opposite players for me.
Yeah,
Brenden shaking his head.
Sasha's done it makes sense, and I think Sasha's done a fine job offensively. Like he's relocating well. He's a good cutter. Obviously, he's a great shooter. He's at 6 of 15 on the year, just at 40% through these 3 games, and he's done kind of as expected offensively. You've seen him fit in. I think defensively, you've seen progress. It's still not good, but progress, and that's a start. So I think that's encouraging. But to the point of rebounding, the one guy I actually want to highlight is Keegan Murray last night. I thought he did a phenomenal job rebounding. And specifically, they pointed out the offensive rebounds that they had last night, 6 offensive rebounds, and they had 20 second chance points. And 2 of those were in overtime that Keegan Murray got an offensive rebound. One, he got the board, gave it straight to Malik Monk. Malik Monk knocked it down. And then a couple possessions later, I think about 2 minutes later, minute and a half left in overtime, I forget who it was. Somebody else put up a 3. He went in, tipped it to Harrison, and Harrison found Malik another dagger 3 right after an offensive rebound. Keegan had 2 huge offensive rebounds, and he had that really cool moment in game where coach was going to sub him out because he didn't shoot a 3 when Austin Reeves was closing out from like the other side of the court, traveled. Coach had Sasha ready there to check in. Very next play, Keegan gets a shot from the exact same spot, pulls it, knocks it down. Coach tells Sasha, never mind, go sit back down. So just on the topic of rebounding, I guess led me to Keegan Murray, who I thought had some really encouraging moments in that game.
Was that the same play where Mike Brown said that Keegan cursed at him and said F you?
Yes. The next shot.
I don't think he said F you.
I don't think so either, right?
Where in the game was that? What moment is it? I'm going to
the first quarter.
The third quarter.
Third?
I think it might.
I think it was the third. Here I have it. I'll send it to you guys.
I might have that on my camera. I might have to take a look at that.
Zoom in.
Yeah.
See if you
definitely
I saw
8-minute mark of the third.
Plenty of lip reading in that game. So there was a few moments.
Yeah, I think watching Keegan Murray right now, first of all, he hasn't been hitting his shots, and but he's had more shots like go in and out than any time I remember in his rookie season. Even the shot that he lined up that would have won the game, and as opposed to going to overtime, like he thought that ball was down, like fully. So I think he's been really good. I think the first quarter he learned a really harsh lesson that just because you have a smaller guy on you doesn't mean that Anthony Davis isn't waiting for you to throw up some weak stuff and swat it into oblivion, which he did twice. So I think that was a good learning curve, but also like if he right now he's shooting 34% from 3. If he bumps that to 40-41 where he was last year, he's already averaging like 18 points a game. Like we're seeing a kid who hasn't even had a good game yet, and he's already at like 16. So yeah, I think the Kings are probably onto something here, that this is going to be like a really, really solid to high end number 2, number 3 scorer for you. Moving forward.
Sorry, he's taken 29 threes in 3 games.
He wants to beat that record he had last year.
And coach is still getting mad at him for not pulling it sometimes.
That was wild. Yeah, he was pissed.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he's been phenomenal. I think he's been really good defensively, way better than he was last year defensively. He had what did he have last night? 5 assists. He's starting to move the ball. He's starting to understand like the game, or at least show more sides of his game. And I just think he's going to continue to get better. So I wouldn't be shocked. Like if he's at 16 right now and kind of stumbling to 16, um, like he's going to be 18, 19, 20 by the end of the season. At least that's what it looks like to me. Unless Fox is averaging 32 points a game every night, and there's just not enough shots to go around for everybody.
He's been incredible.
He has been incredible. Did you guys see that coming? Where he would like not only like become like the all-star and then, but potentially more like an all like a superstar caliber player?
Well, I'll say this: I figured he would have a really big night against the Warriors, and I thought it would come in a little bit different fashion. I didn't think it would be a fourth quarter Fox 20-point in the quarter kind of effort. But I mentioned in the last podcast, like I feel like he's the guy that will kind of become the team's best player, because in my opinion, I think that had been Domantas Sabonis, and I think this is the year he's capable of making that leap. And I don't know what it looks like from a scoring per game average, but to have 2 30-point efforts already through 3 games is pretty nice.
Yeah, he's getting his threes up also. Like, I'm not holding out hope that he's going to take this huge jump from 3. Like last year was already progress, and I think he's already at an okay point. But just talked about Keegan has taken 29, De'Aaron's taken 24, and he's knocked down 9 of them, 37.5%. I thought, like I mentioned earlier, like defensively, he's been great. But yesterday stood out to me that he had 10 points and 3 assists in the first quarter. And, typically this guy takes a little while to ramp up, or, maybe it's just more so wants to get his teammates involved because it looks like he can turn it on whenever, and not everybody has that ability. But for him to do it the entire game instead of slowly ramping up, I think could be another big progression for him. And that 10 and 3 on 4 of 5 in that first quarter yesterday was a little different, I felt like.
Yeah. I think he's just like the way he's been playing has been incredible. Like I hope I hope the ankle injury doesn't slow him down and take the wind out of his sails for a week or 2, or maybe a month, or that we're not like having, because when he hurt himself bad, we got like maybe 10 games into his return, and you could tell that his foot was still mush, and he was out there playing on like one wheel. I hope that that's not what happens this time. I hope that he's ready 100% to come back, and that he doesn't feel like, just because there's so much expectation building on this season, that they can't win without him, because I think this team can actually get through some of this, especially if you have some, you don't want to drop a game in Houston. You don't want to drop either one of those games in Houston. You don't want to drop the game in Portland or against Portland. So like I understand him wanting to get back on the court, but your team should be good enough to get through those games. That's who your team should be. And if they're not, then go ahead and chirp all you want, national media. I mean, of course, we have to see where it's at by the end of the season. But if they can't win when they have a player out for a short stretch or 2, including Trey Lyles, then it's not a good thing. So
that overtime session was a good start, though. I mean, the way they close that out with no Domas, no Fox, and go out there and really take it to them, thought was very impressive.
Yeah, one of the closest players in the league to like the way that Fox plays is Malik Monk. And so having Monk there to like pick up the slack, I think Monk could have a really, really big like week and a half, 2 weeks.
I'm also convinced too that, like, I mean, James, you mentioned how, Monk, his 2-man game with JaVale McGee. I feel like he could have a 2-man game with any one of us. That's how good he is in the pick and roll.
Really bad finishing at the rim. That would not work with me. But
no, you're not.
It's okay.
That's documented.
It is. I'm not.
Just put a headband on, and you're a 3-point shooter.
I don't think I can do that either. Not at this point. But
you just get right back to Malik. You're good to go.
Someone has let the corgi out, and she's decided to make noises. Okay. Domas, foul trouble. Domas putting up near triple doubles every single game. Looks like the same exact player that we saw last year was dominant. Harrison Barnes puts up 33 and then has 2 quiet games. I thought it was really interesting. Our discussion with Sabonis in the locker room was like, yeah, that's just our offense. Like every once in a while, you just don't get the ball. It's the way it goes. And like, it's not that we're trying to freeze somebody out or anything. It's just that we go where like the offense is flowing in that moment. And for some reason, we haven't got Harrison involved enough. Like he goes for 33 in game 1 and then 4 or 5 from the field in game 2. You're like, come on, like you got to get him more opportunities. But that makes sense too, right? That
does it?
The difference in the guys guarding him stands out.
True. Great point.
That Utah game, I forget who's exactly matched up on him, but then Golden State, you got Andrew Wiggins, Kuminga on him, and then you see LeBron on him last night.
Yeah, LeBron was on him a lot.
Utah basically said, if Harrison Barnes beats us, we're okay with that. They just left him. But it's weird because I disagree with Domas because you have a culture that Mike Brown said, hey, Keegan Murray, if you pass up a shot, I'm pulling you. That doesn't exist for Harrison Barnes. Granted, they play different roles. I'm not trying to say that, like, Harrison's going to go out there and take 17 shots or anything like that. But I think it's up to Harrison to, it's what I've always said, be more assertive on the offensive end, especially with the way he can get to the free throw line. It is invaluable, and sometimes they don't utilize that as much. So, but the way Domas is talking about the ball movement when it's at its best is when it's zipping around and there's no dribbles. And in order for Harrison to get to the free throw line, there needs to be some dribbles.
Yeah, out of all the players on the team.
Sorry, I feel like this is how Harrison has been for a couple of years, right? Like,
it is what he is. That's what he is.
When he had 27 in that first half, part of me was like, is he going to reach 30? Are we sure? The second half, and he had 6 in the second half,
right.
And then hardly shot these last 2 games. Like this is,
and it wasn't
Harrison.
Utah didn't make an
12
adjustment.
years.
It's just Harrison. Yeah,
that's 12 years of Harrison. I mean, it is. It's who he's been throughout his career. So, I mean, you live with the good, you live with the bad of each player. I just think he gets too comfortable, like being a good guy, being a good teammate. Sometimes he needs to be more aggressive. And, like you're asking an old dog to learn new tricks.
Like I smile every time he yells in someone's face, like on an and one situation. It's like, certainly he's a competitor. I don't want to take away from him, but there's just a part of me that just goes, oh, that's so cool.
It reminds
it's not in his character. It's just not him.
Yeah, Sharif. When Sharif did it with a broken jaw and got a tech years ago. That's
he also dropped an F. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. But his jaw was wired shut. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't come on. But it does, like the character wise, you're so used to them being like very specific, like acting a certain way, and then when they do act a little different, you're like, huh, that's interesting. Go ahead and yell at somebody, Harrison. I like it. That's funny. Yeah, I think he's also the second best natural like get to the free throw line player that the Kings have. Like Sabonis gets to the line because he gets hit in the head all the time, but naturally drawing fouls, he's not great at it. And if he was, he'd probably average 10 a game because he gets hit all the time. Fox is clearly the best at drawing fouls. And then right behind him is Harrison, who, again, he knows when a team needs to slow it down and he needs to get to the line and he needs to, give everybody a mental break and take it easy for a sec. Although didn't he brick 2 free throws last night? He missed back-to-back. Yeah, he did. Okay. Overall, are you guys like, hey, this has been a good week, or this has been a little shaky of a week?
I think it's been fine. Like pretty as expected.
Yeah, I think so too. How big do you think Wednesday's game is, and how bad do you think this team needs to actually beat that Warriors team to sort of get through, like maybe a little bit of a mental block? Or is it just another game?
It's another game, especially when you're not going to have De'Aaron Fox. So to say that you need to have it, no, because you don't have your starting point guard. But it sure would be nice. It sure would probably go a long way to kind of stop the bleeding against Golden State a little bit. But at least you have your built-in excuse now. Mike Brown isn't going to use any excuses, but I think from a objective standpoint, it's like, hey, you don't have your starting point guard. Draymond Green's back. This team's probably going to kick your teeth in. Can you be competitive? Can you go out there and stop the bleeding a little bit?
Did you say Draymond's going to be back?
I think he is, right?
He's playing a game right now.
Yeah, he's in the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will say the built-in excuse, I think you do also have a little bit of a built-in advantage. Golden State tonight is the second night of a back-to-back for them. They're in New Orleans today. They're at the end of the first quarter as we're recording here on Monday, and then they're going to be in Golden State on Wednesday. They just played a back-to-back. This in New Orleans is the second night of a back-to-back, so that they don't have the easiest schedule coming into this.
So it'll be 3 games in 4 nights?
Yes.
So they played yesterday, they play today, and they play on Wednesday.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And Chris Paul
that's
off the
good.
bench
They were
now.
in Houston, in New Orleans today, and then they go back to Golden State.
Yeah, was Chris Paul off the bench?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they're a much better team with Chris Paul off the bench. Like, he's been really good as an assist man, but they need someone to take over that second unit and really kind of.
He was very good here down the stretch of that game.
I agree.
In the win, he was very good.
Yeah, I thought it was frustrating the Kings because he literally took 22 to 24 seconds of the shot clock every single time. He just put the game in mud. Just like, Chris Paul mood.
Speaking of floppers, great floppers.
The greatest of all floppers, Chris Paul. Well, I mean, or Vlade Divac. I mean, that might be disrespecting Vlade.
Really? Vlade was bad?
Come on.
James,
how old are you, Brenden? Did you not watch?
I did not know this.
He was
Google Vlade Divac.
Brilliant. The most brilliant flop guy of all time. Yes. That big, tall guy, he hit the floor a lot.
I'm legitimately asking this. You've watched that Lakers series, haven't you?
Not fully, honestly. I've watched one of the games.
Oh, no.
I think I found something to give you shit over more so than not watching movies for a guy
that's a project I'm down for, though.
Yeah,
that's a project I'm down for.
I would love to do a live, like we watch the game and make commentary while it's happening. That would be fun. And all of the games blend in together. They do. Like if as far as like looking back, like you think, oh, this happened in this game, and it really didn't. You know, like Robert Horry shot. Like a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, Game 7. Like no, Game 7 was not Robert Horry. That was Game 6. Samaki Walker was like, oh, I want to say that might have been Game 6.
2?
But, oh, maybe it was Game 2. The Kings were up
Game 2?
like at one point like 30 something or 40 and lost. It was 30 something. And then Samaki Walker hits a half court shot after the buzzer, and they allowed it, and then the momentum shifted in the second half, and the Kings lost.
It was Game 4.
It was Game 4, and of course, Game 4 is where Mike Bibby gets called for a foul when Kobe Bryant basically breaks his nose with an elbow in the face, and he's bleeding everywhere. And it was a clear offensive foul on an inbounds. But all of the games like blend in together a little bit.
May 26, 2002, Lakers win 100-99.
Oof.
Crazy.
Yeah. And then Game 7, of course, they missed all the free throws in the fourth quarter.
Brenden hasn't seen any of it. That's so
he hasn't seen any of it. That's wild.
I've seen enough clips.
You child.
Enough. No, you have to. That whole series is amazing. Even the way that Phil Jackson played to the crowd and complained about cowbells and complained about everything. It was next level. The whole entire series was like weird psychological warfare. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I was 4 years old, by the way, so get off my ass.
Well, you've got time. You've had ample time to go back and educate yourself.
All right.
No, Rob.
Let's finish this thing up with a quick version of the business of basketball. The De'Aaron Fox thing, it does kind of put like a weird twist on the next week. How do you think the Kings will handle it? Because I'm here for the adversity. I like that they're gonna be a little uncomfortable here, and I want to see how Mike Brown adjusts to not having his star. I want to see how Malik Monk adjusts, how Davion Mitchell, whether he can step up, whether this is Colby Jones's moment or Chris Duarte. Like, where are you guys at with this? What is it that you want to see in the 3 to 5 games here that we think that De'Aaron Fox will probably miss?
Yeah, I think Davion starting and excelling in that role is a big one for me. Like, obviously, with him getting more minutes is going to mean more shots that he's going to get up, and I need to see how many of those go down and where the improvement lies that he worked on so much in the offseason on that long range shot. We know what he can do defensively. I am really hoping for some Kobe when it comes to just 12 to 15 a night. We'll see if that ends up being the case, and I think it's going to be a lot of just different guys picking up the slack on different nights. You need more from Davion because he's going to play more minutes, but it could be a big night from Malik. It could be a big night from Kevin. It could be a combination of like good nights from any of those two or Harrison Barnes, or I really want to see Keegan Murray be more aggressive with some of his shots, but I know he's still not great at creating for himself necessarily. And a lot of it is off of what De'Aaron sets him up with. So I think it's going to be a group project of sorts. I don't know if it's a lame, boring answer for some people, but I think it's going to take a little bit of everybody. It's not going to be just, okay, we need this guy to up his scoring production specifically. If there's one, I would probably point to Keegan that I would hope to see a little bit more from on a night-to-night basis, a little more aggression with him not being out there. And ideally Harrison, but honestly, with the conversation we had earlier, I don't want to necessarily bet on a super aggressive Harrison Barnes for 3-4 straight games. So yeah, I think it's kind of by committee and a larger role for Davion and maybe a little bit of Colby at the end of it.
Yeah, and in fairness, we haven't had the chance to hear from Mike Brown and how he's going to go forward. But the one thing you do know is he's not going to be starting Malik Monk. He loves Malik Monk with that second unit and his comfort level there. So yeah, every time he's had this opportunity, it's been Davion Mitchell. So we know what that'll look like, at least in that aspect, how the rest of it trickles down and how long De'Aaron is out. I mean, this is going to answer a lot of the questions that not only we've had, but I think fans and even national media. What do they look like with a prolonged absence? And hopefully this isn't a prolonged absence, but let's, for the sake of argument, say it lasts 2 weeks. Okay. I think what you look forward to is that you have some less than stellar opposition outside of really the Warriors that's coming up. So you, for lack of a better term, should be able to go out and put a very competitive product together. I think if you're going 2-1 on that 3-game stint, that's fantastic. Even against, of the next 2-1 with the 3-game road trip. But let's just chalk the Warriors game up to a loss, which no one will want to do. But if you take that as a loss, even if you go 2-1 outside of that, and I'm including the Portland game back in Sacramento, I'm okay with that. Even I just want to see a competitive product. I want to see that this team can show its ability to hold their mud, so to speak, and rely on some of these guys. You've got the quality depth, and if you don't, if all of a sudden this kind of slides the other way, and you notice that there's a glaring weakness, and it's not having people step up in the absence of De'Aaron Fox, I think the criticisms become louder, and I think the criticisms, rightfully so, become a little bit louder, even if it ends up being, like I said, a 2-week stint, which really doesn't tell the whole story of a team or a season. But I would be ready for those criticisms to become a little bit louder.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I would like to see Keegan Murray, like get up to 24 points a game for the next 4 games. Get in the 2-man game
with, bro. That's a lot.
It's not when all of a sudden that's 8 points per game when there's a whole lot of extra shots available. Yeah. Like we're talking about 23.5 shots just became available if he's not playing. Like, and those aren't going to Davion Mitchell. He can have, an extra 4 and tack on to the 5 he's already getting, 4 or 5. But like somebody else has to pick up the slack.
Well, honestly, I'm with you. I'm with you there. I mean, but to say to 24, to average 24 in that regard, I think not enough will be put on Domas. Has to be the dude. You got to go out there and score, man. I mean, he's putting some great games together. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's going out there and he's getting numbers, but I'd like to see that scoring increase a bit.
Against Houston, sure. Maybe not Golden State.
What if what if he just isn't a big scorer? Like, I'm totally fine with who he is. Like, if he's 19, 12.5, and 7 again, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, I think that if that's who he is, that's okay. So I think Keegan's is the one that statistically can take the leap, and just like the shots will be there. But I want to see him in the 2-man game. I want to see him get a little uncomfortable. So sweet. All right, let's finish how we always do. What do we got for final thoughts? So we will start with Sean Cunningham. What do you got? Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Did you see the court for the in-game tournaments?
Bad, so ugly.
I don't have a problem with it looking considerably different. It doesn't look good, but I kind of felt that way about most of the courts. In fairness, I'm not a fan of the lion logo either. Like that is kind of being like going into those bag of logos that they have. Not my favorite, but particularly with that scheme, it wasn't my favorite. How about you guys? Brenden already on record.
Like the gray? Like what's with the? I don't know, man. Like I get they're going away from the hardwood, and I do think just from a viewing standpoint, it makes it very easy to tell which games are playing games, right? I see the value in that. It's ugly though.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm assuming they're always going to be wearing their alternates because everybody is. It aligns with everybody's alternate jerseys, and I don't know. It's weird to me. It's going to be so weird that it's a full gray court with this blue line down the middle, and that's the Sacramento Kings.
I want to see the functionality of it. I want to see it in person and see if it actually looks that odd. Like I don't want to make it does it look great right now? No, but I also I'm kind of shocked. Number one, did they really just make them build an entirely new court and pay for an entirely new court just for this?
For every
That
team.
that is wild, because those things are like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So like I'm totally shocked that they're going to have a new alternative stack of wood hiding somewhere inside Golden One Center that's an alternative court that they only pull out like 5 or 6 times a year, or 4 or 5 times a year. I mean, to me, that's wild. Outside of
Maybe
that,
it'll
like
get donated to like some community center eventually.
no, they'll probably strip it down and repaint it for next year.
The community center's like, no, we're good.
No, community center's like, oh no, that court's hideous.
By the way,
I don't really care.
To follow up on that, 2 things. They did another court refurbish, one that they had already done out at the Mac Road Valley High Community Center, and kind of give it a new touch of paint, kind of refurbish some things that they'd already done a few years ago. And to see Davion Mitchell and Colby Jones out there with some of these kids who I love confidence of children, and how, they can be all but 2 feet high and chucking a ball up there, and you just hear all over, watch this, like wanting to get an NBA player's approval on their jumper. And so like, it's so much fun to watch those guys interact with kids. And I think mainly is just, I think kids are phenomenal and so fun, but that was a lot of fun to be out there on Saturday. And also, finally, my final thought, Flava Flav and his national anthem, bring it to Sacramento. I'm ready for it. Davion Mitchell's uncle, how about that? He was singing the anthem.
He was good
against the Warriors. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was nice. Brenden, you done with final thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much. That court is like an abomination. Why the hell? I don't understand. There's worse ones for sure. I hate all of them when it comes down to
everyone.
Like, this is not a Kings
like
thing.
Any of them?
I gotta look through the whole list again. Quick glance. I just was like, why are we doing this? And I got out of there real quick. It is wild to me, though, that we are only 11 days away from the first in-season tournament game.
You know what's weird, Brennan? It's just the same thing as a regular season game. It actually counts as
not,
James.
It's
just
is the NBA
same.
Cup.
It's the same exact thing.
That's James's way of saying, a polished up way of saying he does not care about the in-season tournament.
I don't. I'm going to show up to the game, and whoever wins the game, I'll write 6 quick thoughts, and I'll do interviews, and then I'll go on to the next game.
I want to go to Vegas, personally.
Are you going for the in-season tournament?
If they go.
I think if they only have to be in the top 8 to go. I don't know. They don't have the worst bracket.
Yeah, I think it's that they have to either win their group or there's like 2 wild cards that make it. And they're in a group with Oklahoma City, Minnesota, New Orleans, and Golden State.
I thought San Antonio.
And San Antonio. Sorry, I did forget that one.
Oh, okay. Is it 4 games or 5 games?
They
got to play everybody once.
I can pull it up real quick here.
It said New Orleans.
It is the 10th of Friday. It's 3 Fridays in a row. First, OKC on the 10th, San Antonio on the road on the 17th, and then on the road against Minnesota on the 24th. And then the final one will be a Tuesday game, the 28th of November against Golden State at home.
Okay, so New Orleans is not in their bracket. Are you sure?
They are not.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
My apologies.
Yeah, that's the one I was like, oh, that one of those doesn't sound right.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see. My final thoughts. The biggest, I think,
yeah, look
the
out
biggest
there.
thing. Nope.
You put a lot of effort.
I think Sac Republic have a huge game this weekend. So I've been told that there are tickets available still. But if you want to see that game, you better buy your tickets now because it will be sold out by the weekend.
You gonna go?
I think we have a game that night, don't we?
Oh, we don't play.
Kings Rockets.
They're on the road.
Well, yeah, but I still have to sit there and watch a game. Same time. Well, it's a 5:00 game, I think, right?
You'll be just fine.
Yeah, but like that's a huge game. If they win that game, then they host the finals, the final game the next weekend,
which would be on a Sunday.
Oh,
kind of weird.
All right. Outside of that, make sure that you're following my 2 friends here on social media. What is it? At Sean Cunningham. What is that? What yours is on Twitter?
It is. Yep.
Okay, and at Brenden_Nunes NBA.
No underscore anymore. I think that was a couple of years ago.
You took the underscore out. So it's at Brenden Nunes NBA.
Is it linked down there? I think we have it linked somewhere down there on the page.
Somewhere way down below in the YouTube thing. If you're still watching, give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel. Jump on board with the Kings Beat. Tune in to all the work that we do on our other stations, Fox 40, Brendan's stuff over the Kings Pulse podcast and everywhere else Brenden creates content. And jump on board again with the Kings Beat and visit me and my good friend Kyle Madsen 10 to noon Monday through Friday on ESPN 1320 for the Insiders. That's gonna do it.
To see Kyle the other day, that was good.
The funny thing, I'll mention this as part of one of my final thoughts. Kyle knows everyone. Were you guys around? Like everyone knows Kyle. It was really interesting because I was like, okay, well, Kyle's coming to the first game to like cover, and I thought I would have to like make sure Kyle knew people. No, Kyle knows everyone. That dude knows everyone, which is awesome. He's a good dude. Sweet. All right, that's gonna do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. We'll be back later this week. Faux show. We will have prize picks to talk about. And we'll have all kinds of crazy stuff to discuss with the Kings playing the Golden State Warriors without De'Aaron Fox on Wednesday. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you very soon.
Faux show.